He proposed divorce in front of our dinner guests, his co-workers, smugly saying, "She's too boring for me now." I excused myself, came back with his mistress. His secretary. Turns out she kept receipts. Every shady deal, every fake invoice. He thought I'd be the enemy. I gave her immunity. He got an audit. And a box to pack his things. She doesn't match my image anymore. I'm rising. She's stuck. I felt every syllable of Logan's announcement like a physical blow. My champagne glass froze halfway to my lips as the table fell silent. 20 faces turned to me, some shocked, others pitying, a few deliberately looking away. My husband had just asked for a divorce during his promotion dinner, and he wasn't even looking at me. Instead, he smirked toward Catherine, his secretary, who at least had the decency to blush. 7 years of marriage, erased with one calculated public humiliation. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, glaring in retrospect. But to understand how I ended up at that table, and more importantly what happened next, we need to go back to the beginning. If this story of betrayal and calculated revenge speaks to you, consider subscribing. It's free and connects you with more stories of women reclaiming their power. Now let's continue with Anna's journey. I met Logan Miller on orientation day at Westcrest Financial. Both freshly graduated with business degrees, we were part of the same cohort of bright-eyed newcomers ready to climb the corporate ladder. Logan stood out immediately, confident, articulate, with a magnetic charm that drew people in. While others seemed intimidated by his presence, I found myself intrigued. "So, Anna Williams," he said, approaching me during the lunch break. "I noticed you were the only one who challenged the CFO's projections during the presentation. Impressive." I shrugged, trying to hide my surprise that he'd noticed. The numbers didn't add up. Someone had to say it. His laugh was warm, genuine. "I like people who speak their mind. Want to grab coffee after this endless orientation? I have a feeling we're going to be friends." That coffee turned into dinner into late-night strategy sessions for work projects, and eventually into something deeper. We complemented each other perfectly. Logan was bold and visionary while I was detail-oriented and practical. Our colleagues jokingly called us the Dream Team, as we collaborated on increasingly important accounts. On our wedding day 2 years later, Logan whispered, "We're going to conquer this company together, you and me." I believed him with every fiber of my being. The first 3 years of marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We pushed each other professionally, celebrating each small victory together. When I landed the Richards account, the one everyone said was impossible, Logan rented out our favorite restaurant and invited our closest friends to celebrate. When he received his first major promotion, I spent weeks planning a surprise weekend getaway to the coast. "We're unstoppable together," he'd say, and I believed it was true. But something shifted during our 4th year of marriage. Subtly at first, so subtly I questioned if I was imagining it. Logan began staying later at the office. Weekend work became common. His phone became an extension of his hand, and he'd step away to take calls during our rare dinners together. "It's just temporary," he assured me. "This Davidson project could be my stepping stone to senior management." I supported him, of course. That's what partners do. When he mentioned the project required frequent trips to the New York office, I helped him pack. When those trips extended from 2 days to 4, then to entire weeks, I maintained our home and sent him encouraging messages. What I didn't tell him was that I'd been approached about a promotion too, one that would have put me on the executive track, leading the emerging markets division. The timing conflicted with Logan's project, and someone would need to maintain our presence in the Seattle office. "Maybe next year," my supervisor said kindly when I declined the opportunity. "Family comes first." "I understand." Logan never knew about my sacrifice. It didn't seem important to mention it. We were a team after all. His success was our success. Until it wasn't. The first time I met Catherine White was at the company holiday party. Logan introduced her as the most efficient secretary in the building. "She's saving my life on the Davidson project." She was poised, articulate, and undeniably beautiful. Something in the way she looked at Logan made my stomach tighten, but I dismissed the feeling as petty jealousy. "Catherine is amazing," Logan mentioned with increasing frequency. Catherine suggested a new approach to the client presentation. Catherine stayed late to help me prepare for the board meeting. When I suggested a weekend away to reconnect, Our first in months. Logan checked his calendar and frowned. I can't. Catherine scheduled a strategy session with the New York team on Saturday. Can't you reschedule? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. We haven't had a weekend together in almost 3 months. His expression hardened slightly. This is important, Anna. The Davidson project will determine my future at Westcrest. Our future, I corrected gently. His pause lasted just a beat too long. Right. Our future. That night, I found myself staring at our wedding photo on the nightstand while Logan slept soundly beside me. We looked so young, so certain of our shared path. When had we started walking separate roads? The distance between us grew wider with each passing month. Logan's dismissals of my concerns became more direct. You're being insecure, he said when I mentioned Catherine's late-night texts. She's just dedicated to her job. You're overreacting, he insisted when I pointed out he'd missed my birthday dinner. This is how corporate America works. Maybe if you were more ambitious, he suggested during one particularly heated argument, you'd understand what I'm trying to accomplish. That one stung the most. I had been ambitious, still was, but had chosen to support his dreams temporarily. The fact that he couldn't see that revealed how little he now understood me. When the announcement came that Logan had been promoted to senior vice president, I forced myself to be happy for him. This was what he'd worked for, what we'd worked for, wasn't it? The company planned a celebration dinner at Oakmont, the most exclusive restaurant in Seattle. Important clients would attend, along with the executive team. This is a big night for us, I said, emphasizing the us slightly. I'll wear that blue dress you always liked. Logan barely looked up from his phone. Wear whatever you want. Just make sure it's appropriate for the occasion. Despite everything, I decided to make one last effort. I spent hours getting ready for the dinner, had my hair styled the way he used to compliment, bought a new dress that matched his favorite tie. I even arranged with the restaurant to have a special champagne toast prepared with the same vintage we'd had at our wedding. As I applied my lipstick, I practiced my smile in the mirror. Maybe this celebration would remind Logan of what we once meant to each other. Maybe it would help us find our way back to being partners again. How naive I was. How desperately I clung to what was already gone. I couldn't have known that within hours, Logan would publicly announce his desire for divorce in front of everyone who mattered in our professional lives. I couldn't have imagined he would dismiss our entire relationship, our shared dreams, my sacrifices, our history, with such casual cruelty. And I certainly never suspected that his humiliating announcement would ultimately lead to his downfall, or that I would be the architect of his professional ruin. But that moment was still hours away as I fastened the clasp on my necklace and called out, Logan, we should leave soon. We don't want to be late for your celebration. The navy blue silk dress hung on our bedroom door, the price tag still attached. I'd splurged far beyond our usual budget, convinced this night deserved something special. The saleswoman had assured me it was perfect, classic with a modern edge, exactly what the wife of a newly promoted executive should wear. I spent 2 hours getting ready. A stylist at Dry Bar created soft waves in my hair, the way Logan had once told me looked effortlessly beautiful. My makeup was subtle but polished, and I'd even scheduled a manicure during my lunch break. As I fastened the teardrop pearl earrings Logan had given me for our 5th anniversary, I studied my reflection. For the first time in months, I recognized a spark of hope in my eyes. Logan? We should leave in 15 minutes. I called, smoothing the dress one final time. He appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his charcoal suit and checking his watch. His eyes flicked over me, pausing briefly on the dress. Is that new? His tone wasn't curious, it was assessing. Yes. Do you like it? He frowned slightly. It's a bit much, isn't it? This is a business dinner, not a cocktail party. The spark in my eyes dimmed. The saleswoman said it was perfect for an executive dinner. You're not the executive, he replied, checking his phone. Anyway, it's fine. We're running late. Catherine's already texted that some people have arrived. The casual mention of his secretary's name, and the fact she was apparently texting him about dinner guests, felt like a small slap. I swallowed my response and grabbed my clutch. The drive to Oakmont was mostly silent. Logan fielded 3 phone calls, speaking in that artificially enthusiastic voice he reserved for important contacts. Between calls, he rehearsed talking points for conversations with specific executives, never once mentioning my role for the evening or asking if I was nervous about meeting the senior leadership. Oakmont Restaurant occupied the top floor of Seattle's glass-wrapped azimuth tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the twinkling city and distant mountains. Any other night, I would have been awed by the spectacular view, the impeccable service, the menu rumored to have a 3-month waiting list. Tonight, I noticed only the heavy knot of anxiety in my stomach as we stepped off the elevator. Catherine greeted us immediately. "Logan, everyone's been asking for you." Her smile dimmed fractionally when she noticed me. "Anna, that's a lovely dress." Her tone was perfect, professional, courteous. Yet something in her eyes made me wonder if she'd already heard Logan's criticism in the car. I pushed the thought away as paranoia. The private dining room buzzed with conversation. Westcrest's senior team mingled with key clients, everyone holding crystal flutes of champagne. Logan was immediately surrounded, accepting congratulations with practiced modesty. Anna. Marcus Coleman, Westcrest's chief financial officer, approached with his wife Susan. "Congratulations on Logan's promotion. You must be thrilled." "We both are," I smiled, emphasizing the both slightly. "Of course," Susan nodded, but something in her expression seemed off. She glanced across the room where Logan was speaking animatedly with Catherine at his side. "How are you doing, really?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be?" Susan hesitated. "No reason. Just checking in. We should have dinner sometime, just us girls." Before I could respond, a server announced that dinner would be served. As we moved toward the long table, I noticed Logan had arranged the seating. He sat at the center beside CEO James Harrison, with Catherine directly across from him. I was placed 4 seats away, between an insurance client I'd never met and an empty chair. "Your husband's going places," the client informed me between bites of seared scallops. "Youngest SVP in company history, I hear." I nodded, watching Logan lean toward Catherine to whisper something that made her smile. Throughout the appetizer and main course, he never once looked in my direction. When dessert arrived, an artful construction of chocolate and gold leaf, Harrison stood to make a toast. The room quieted as he praised Logan's vision, drive, and contribution to Westcrest's record profits. "To Logan Miller," Harrison concluded, raising his glass. "The future of Westcrest Financial." Everyone raised their glasses. I caught Logan's eye across the table and smiled. For an instant I thought he might acknowledge me, his partner, the woman who had supported every step of his career. Instead, he remained standing as Harrison sat down. "Thank you, James. This promotion represents everything I've worked toward." His confident voice filled the room. "And speaking of the future, I believe in making decisive changes when necessary." A strange feeling crawled up my spine. Anna and I met at Westcrest. She's been beside me throughout my journey here. He paused, and for a heartbeat I thought he might actually be acknowledging my support. But I've realized recently that what served me in the past isn't what I need moving forward. His gaze never met mine. "She doesn't match my image anymore." "I'm rising." "She's stuck." The room went completely silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I've begun divorce proceedings," Logan continued as casually as if announcing a department restructuring. "I believe in transparency, so I wanted you all, my valued colleagues and mentors, to understand this transition in my personal life." The high-pitched ringing started in my ears, drowning out whatever he said next. My skin felt both numb and hypersensitive simultaneously. The room tilted slightly, the lights too bright, the silence too loud. Someone at the table coughed uncomfortably. A fork clinked against china. Across from me, Catherine studied her dessert with intense focus, her cheeks flushed. I became acutely aware of every sensation: the scratch of the silk dress against my collarbone, the weight of the pearl earrings he'd given me, the suffocating pressure of maintaining my expression. With mechanical precision, I placed my napkin beside my plate and stood. My voice, when it came, sounded distant, as if someone else were speaking. "If you'll excuse me." I walked, not too quickly, not too slowly, toward the door. Every step required immense concentration. "Don't stumble. Don't cry. Don't give them anything else to whisper about tomorrow." The elevator ride lasted an eternity. The lobby passed in a blur. I made it to my car, slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Only then did I allow myself to break. The sobs came violently ripping through my chest. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and let 7 years of partnership, trust, and love crumble into rage and humiliation. I set the timer on my phone for exactly 5 minutes. When it chimed, I forced myself to stop crying. With trembling hands, I wiped my face, reapplied my lipstick, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. 5 minutes, I whispered to myself. That's all he gets. I started the engine but didn't head home. An idea was forming. Something beyond tears, beyond the script of the abandoned wife. If Logan wanted to humiliate me publicly, I would respond with something much more devastating than emotional outbursts. I needed to pay someone a visit. I drove through Seattle's rain-slicked streets in a strange state of heightened awareness. Every stoplight, every turn felt significant. The first decisions of my new life. The life Logan had thrust upon me without warning. Our house was dark when I arrived. I'd beaten him home, which meant he'd stayed at the restaurant, probably accepting sympathetic pats on the shoulder for having such a difficult personal situation during his professional triumph. I kicked off my heels in the entryway, leaving them where they fell. The silence of the house pressed against me as I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. My dress, the one I'd carefully selected to please him, suddenly felt like a costume from someone else's life. I unzipped it and let it pool on the floor, stepping over it without a second glance. Wrapped in my robe, I wandered downstairs to Logan's home office. We'd converted the smallest bedroom into his workspace when he started bringing more projects home. It was his domain, a place I rarely entered anymore. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Evidence of his affair with Catherine? Some explanation for the cruel public execution of our marriage? I just knew I couldn't sit still with my thoughts spinning in endless circles of humiliation and betrayal. The office was meticulously organized as always. Logan's laptop was gone, still at work with him, but his desk held several file folders and a leather portfolio. I sat in his chair, feeling oddly transgressive, and opened the top drawer. Nothing unusual. Pens, paper clips, a company directory. The second drawer held notepads and spare chargers. In the bottom drawer, I found a stack of file folders labeled with client names and project codes. I recognized most of them from conversations over the years. The Davidson project that had consumed so much of his time, the Archer acquisition, the Meridian partnership. Without any clear purpose, I opened the Davidson folder and began flipping through the contents. Most of it was standard documentation. Contracts, timelines, budget projections. But halfway through I noticed something odd. A series of invoices from suppliers I didn't recognize, each for substantial amounts. Brayburn Consulting, $147,000. VectorPoint Solutions, $86,500. Argent Research Group, $215,000. The number seemed unusually round for legitimate business expenses. And the companies themselves felt generic. Manufactured. A yellow sticky note was attached to one invoice, with neat handwriting I didn't recognize. No incorporation records found for Brayburn. Second address non-existent. Verification. I stared at the note, pulse quickening. Then I checked the other invoices. More sticky notes, all in the same precise handwriting. Amount exceeds approved budget by $53,000. No deliverables documented. Third identical payment this quarter. Someone was questioning these transactions. Someone with access to Logan's files. Someone who was either very thorough or very suspicious. I grabbed my phone and searched for Brayburn Consulting. Nothing substantial appeared, just a basic website with stock photos and vague service descriptions. Same for VectorPoint and Argent. All three had minimal online presence for companies receiving six-figure payments. A realization hit me with such force that I actually gasped aloud. The handwriting on those notes, I'd seen it before. On meeting agendas. On Logan's schedule printouts. It belonged to Catherine. Logan's secretary was documenting discrepancies in his financial dealings. But why? If they were having an affair, wouldn't she be complicit in whatever he was doing? Unless she was protecting herself. I spent the next 2 hours combing through every folder in Logan's office. A pattern emerged. Large payments to shell companies, unusual fund transfers, client billing with inflated hours. And throughout, Catherine's meticulous notes, cataloging every questionable transaction. My grief had crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused. Logan hadn't just betrayed our marriage, he appeared to be embezzling company funds. And his secretary, rather than being merely his accomplice in infidelity, was creating a detailed record of his misconduct. I needed to talk to her. I found Catherine's address in Westcrest's employee directory, which Logan had brought home during last year's emergency planning session. She lived in a newer apartment complex in Capitol Hill, about 20 minutes from our house. It was nearly midnight when I parked outside her building. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was insane, confronting my husband's mistress hours after he'd publicly humiliated me. But nothing about this night existed in the realm of rational behavior. I pressed her apartment number on the call box, heart hammering. After a long pause, her voice came through the speaker, wary and tired. "Hello. It's Anna Miller, Logan's wife. We need to talk." Another pause, longer this time. Then the door buzzed open. The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave me time to doubt every decision that had led me here. What was I hoping to accomplish? To scream at her? To demand answers? To compare notes on Logan's betrayal? Catherine was waiting in her doorway, still wearing her outfit from dinner, though she'd removed her heels and jewelry. Her expression was a complex mixture of dread, defensiveness, and, unexpectedly, resignation. "I'm surprised it took you this long," she said quietly, stepping back to let me enter. Her apartment was smaller than I'd expected, neat and minimally decorated, with stacks of books on the coffee table and a half-empty glass of wine on the counter. "How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended, but my diplomatic reserves were utterly depleted. Catherine flinched. 6 months. Since the Davidson project started. No excuses, no denial. Just facts. "And how long have you been documenting his financial fraud?" Her head snapped up, eyes widening. "How did you?" "I found your notes. The sticky questions about fake companies and missing funds." She sank onto her sofa, fingers pressed against her temples. 8 months. I noticed discrepancies in the expense reports first. Then the shell companies. She looked up at me, her composure cracking. I never meant to get involved with him. But he was persistent. Made me feel special. Needed. "You're not the first," I said, remaining standing. His previous secretary transferred departments suddenly. Now I wonder if the pattern was the same. Catherine's laugh held no humor. "He told me she couldn't handle the pressure. That I was different. Smarter. More capable." She reached for her wine glass. "Last week he mentioned bringing in an assistant for me. A younger one. Said I seemed overwhelmed." The parallel was unmistakable. Catherine had seen it too. "He's setting you up," I said. "When whatever he's doing eventually comes to light, you'll be the one with your fingerprints on the paperwork." She nodded slowly. "I realized that 3 months ago. That's when I started keeping copies. Documentation of his instructions. Records of everything." We stared at each other across the room. Two women who should have been enemies but found themselves unlikely allies against the same manipulator. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Catherine set down her glass. "Because he humiliated you tonight in front of everyone who matters in your career. Because he talks about you like you're an outdated appliance he's replacing. And because..." She hesitated. "Because I think he's planning to do the same to me, just in a different way." In that moment something shifted between us. Not friendship, we were too damaged for that. But a recognition, a solidarity born from shared injuries. "I have an idea," I said, pulling out my phone. "But I need to see exactly what evidence you have." Catherine spread her evidence across her dining table. A meticulous archive of Logan's financial misconduct. Color-coded folders contained copies of questionable invoices, emails with contradictory instructions, and screenshots of calendar entries that didn't match official meeting logs. "I started documenting everything after the Archer acquisition," she explained, opening a particularly thick folder. "Logan instructed me to process invoices for market research. That never happened. When I asked questions, he said it wasn't my place to understand the bigger picture." I examined the documents, my finance degree finally proving useful after years of being underutilized. "These shell companies, they all funnel back to offshore accounts, don't they?" Catherine nodded. "I tracked the money trail as far as I could without raising flags. Best I can tell, he's siphoned nearly $2 million over the past year." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. All those late nights he'd claimed were devoted to company success had actually been spent constructing an elaborate fraud. The irony is, I said quietly, Logan always called me boring because I'm methodical. Disoriented. The very qualities that help me see exactly what he's doing now. Catherine's expression softened slightly. He does the same to me. Calls me his reliable watchdog to colleagues, like it's a compliment. But when we're alone, he mocks my obsession with procedure, and calls me rigid. Yet he relied on that trait to maintain his fraud, I noted. He never suspected you'd use that same attention to detail against him. Men like Logan, Catherine said, gathering documents into organized piles, they only see what benefits them. We're just functional objects. Useful until we're not. The painful truth hung between us. We'd both been reduced to our utility. Wife as status symbol, secretary as facilitator, with our actual talents dismissed as personality flaws. So what's your plan? Catherine asked. I outlined my thoughts. We would deliver evidence of Logan's embezzlement to Westcrest's compliance team anonymously, ensuring neither of us appeared to be the source. We'd continue our normal routines at work to avoid suspicion while the investigation proceeded. That's it. Catherine looked disappointed. After what he did to you at dinner, you just want the company to handle it quietly? I smiled for the first time that night. Oh, that's just phase one. I want Logan to feel completely secure before everything collapses. I want him caught at the height of his arrogance. Dawn was breaking when I finally left Catherine's apartment, our unlikely alliance cemented by shared betrayal and a detailed action plan. Returning to work proved more difficult than I'd anticipated. News of Logan's dinner announcement had spread throughout Westcrest with predictable speed. The elevator ride to our floor became an exercise in composure as conversations halted when I entered and resumed in whispers after I exited. My assistant Diane greeted me with excessive cheerfulness. I brought your favorite latte. Extra shot just how you like it. The sympathy in her eyes was almost worse than the whispers. I thanked her and retreated to my office, where an email from HR awaited, delicately inquiring about potential workplace accommodations during this personal transition. At lunch, I deliberately sat in the company cafeteria rather than hiding away. Colleagues avoided my table like I carried something contagious. Divorce, perhaps, or public humiliation. Only Marcus Coleman, the CFO, briefly stopped by. Anna, he said quietly, what Logan did was unprofessional and cruel. If you need anything, a transfer, different projects, just say the word. I thanked him with a calm I didn't feel. Actually, I'm fine right where I am. I've always believed in finishing what I start. Across the cafeteria, I spotted Logan holding court at a table of admirers, Catherine efficiently taking notes beside him. To anyone watching, we were the perfect corporate tableau. The rising executive, his attentive secretary, and his soon-to-be ex-wife maintaining dignified distance. That afternoon, Catherine and I met briefly in the file room, exchanging information under the pretense of transferring project documents. He's scheduled a one-on-one with Harrison tomorrow, she whispered. I think he's going to propose restructuring the Davidson project team. Let me guess, removing anyone who might question his methods too closely? She nodded. Including the financial controller who's been asking about those Brayburn invoices. Perfect timing, I replied. I submitted the anonymous evidence package to compliance this morning. We separated quickly when footsteps approached, resuming our roles as professional strangers. The duplicity was exhausting but also oddly exhilarating. At home each night, doubt and fear would creep in. What if our plan failed? What if Logan somehow twisted the investigation to implicate Catherine? What if I was overestimating my own cleverness and underestimating his? During one particularly bleak 3 a.m. spiral, I almost called Catherine to abort our plan. Instead, I reread my notes from a financial forensics workshop I'd attended years ago. A professional development course Logan had mocked as unnecessarily technical for my position. Those boring skills now formed the backbone of our strategy. Day by day we maintained our charade. I processed reports and attended meetings with robotic efficiency while secretly tracking the compliance investigation's progress through a contact in internal audit. Catherine continued as Logan's perfect secretary, anticipating his needs and maintaining his calendar while strategically placing additional evidence where investigators would find it. The psychological toll was considerable. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and jumped whenever my phone rang. Catherine confessed during one of our clandestine meetings that she'd started having panic attacks in the ladies' room. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it," she admitted, her usual composure cracking. "He's so confident, so untouchable. What if we're just destroying ourselves instead of him?" I surprised myself by reaching for her hand. "That's exactly what he's counted on all along, that we'd be too afraid to challenge him. That we'd accept being diminished. That his version of reality would prevail because he's said it loud enough, long enough." Catherine squeezed my hand briefly before letting go. "How are you holding up with all the office gossip?" I grimaced. "Yesterday I overheard someone say Logan left because I let myself go. Apparently my greatest crime was not maintaining my appearance to executive spouse standards. Meanwhile, 3 different men have asked me if I'm available now that the Logan situation is resolving," Catherine countered with a bitter laugh. "We developed an unexpected friendship, not based on shared interests or natural affinity, but on mutual respect for each other's resilience." I admired Catherine's precision and courage in documenting Logan's misdeeds despite personal risk. She seemed to value my strategic thinking and emotional steadiness under pressure. 2 weeks into our plan, the first tangible sign of success appeared. Compliance requested additional documentation on all Davidson project expenditures. Logan, unaware of the scrutiny's true source, assigned Catherine to compile the records, assuring her he'd guide her through any sensitive areas. "It's starting," I texted Catherine that night, a simple message that carried all our shared anticipation and anxiety. Her response came immediately. "He still thinks we're both exactly what he always thought, predictable, boring women who know our place. He never once considered we might be dangerous." 3 days after compliance requested the Davidson files, I received a text from Marcus Coleman. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Your presence requested. Confidential." I immediately called Catherine. "Tomorrow's the day. Has Logan mentioned anything about a board meeting?" "No," she sounded tense. "He's been in an unusually good mood actually. Just approved a weekend trip to Whistler with some clients." "Perfect," I said. "He has no idea what's coming." That night I stood before my closet, fingers trailing across hangers until they found it. The navy blue silk dress I'd worn to the promotion dinner. The dress he'd criticized as too much before publicly humiliating me. I removed the dry cleaning plastic and laid it out for morning. Sleep evaded me. I kept rehearsing what I might say, how I would maintain composure when Logan finally understood who had orchestrated his downfall. By dawn, I'd abandoned any hope of rest and instead sat at my vanity, carefully applying makeup to mask my exhaustion. The dress still fit perfectly, though I'd lost weight in the week since that fateful dinner. I fastened the same pearl earrings, swept my hair into the same elegant twist. The symmetry felt important somehow, closing a circle, returning to the scene of the crime with new purpose. I arrived at West Crest 30 minutes early, surprised to find Catherine waiting in the lobby. She wore a crisp white blouse I'd never seen before, professional but striking. "New shirt?" I asked. "First purchase with my raise," she replied with a small smile. "The one Logan's been too busy to process for 3 months." We rode the elevator in silence, our reflections in the polished doors showing 2 composed professional women betraying no hint of the emotional storm beneath our calm exteriors. The boardroom was already half full. James Harrison and the executive team occupied one end of the table, while representatives from legal and compliance filled the other. Marcus nodded slightly when we entered, his expression giving nothing away. Catherine took a seat near the door while I chose one directly across from where Logan would sit. 10 minutes later he strode in, exuding confidence in a freshly tailored suit. He faltered momentarily upon seeing me, clearly surprised by my presence and my identical outfit. I met his gaze without expression. "Logan," Harrison began once everyone was seated, "thank you for joining us. I'm sure you're wondering about this unexpected meeting." "Always happy to help with company matters," Logan replied smoothly, though his eyes darted between me and the serious faces around the table. Harrison nodded to Eliza Winters, head of compliance. "Eliza, please proceed." "Mr. Miller," she began formally, Our department has been conducting an investigation into financial irregularities within the Davidson project. We've identified numerous unauthorized payments, falsified invoices, and improper fund transfers totaling approximately $2.1 million. Logan's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped his pen. There must be some misunderstanding. The Davidson project involves complex international transactions. Perhaps your team misinterpreted standard practices. We considered that possibility, Eliza continued, sliding a folder across the table. Until we traced the shell companies receiving these payments. All roads lead back to accounts controlled directly or indirectly by you. His composure cracked slightly. This is absurd. Who provided this so-called evidence? It's clearly a misrepresentation. The evidence speaks for itself, Harrison interjected. Multiple sources have corroborated these findings. Logan's eyes locked on me, sudden comprehension dawning. This is her doing, isn't it? My wife, soon ex-wife, trying to sabotage me out of spite. I remained silent, my face neutral. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Logan, Harrison said firmly, this isn't about your personal situation. The documentation is extensive and conclusive. Documentation maintained by my secretary, Logan countered, turning toward Catherine. If there are irregularities, she processed everything. She's the one who should be investigated. Catherine didn't flinch. I followed your explicit instructions, Mr. Miller. Instructions I fortunately documented thoroughly, as is my standard practice. You treacherous, Logan began, then caught himself. She's lying. She's clearly colluding with my wife. Mr. Miller, Eliza cut in. Both Ms. White and Mrs. Miller approached compliance independently with concerns. They've both been granted immunity in exchange for their cooperation, as neither directly benefited from the misappropriated funds. The blood drained from Logan's face. His desperate glance swept the room, searching for allies and finding none. His charming smile reappeared, the one that had once made me believe anything he said. James, we've known each other for years. This is clearly a misunderstanding that we can resolve privately. There's no need for this spectacle. Harrison remained impassive. The board has reviewed the evidence and made its decision. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Legal will contact you regarding potential criminal charges. Logan's facade finally shattered. You can't do this. I built the Davidson portfolio. The clients trust me. Catherine, tell them there's been a mistake. Catherine gathered her notes and stood. I've already told them everything they need to know, Mr. Miller. As security was called to escort Logan from the building, his eyes found mine, filled with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. You, he hissed. Boring, predictable Anna orchestrated this? I leaned forward, speaking just loudly enough for him to hear. I learned from the best how to identify weaknesses and exploit them. Yours was always your ego. The aftermath of the board meeting passed in a blur. I declined Harrison's offer to take the day off, instead returning to my office to complete a report due that afternoon. Normality felt like its own form of victory. That evening I arrived home to find Logan's car in the driveway. I'd known this confrontation was inevitable, yet my heart still raced as I unlocked the door. He was upstairs, haphazardly throwing clothes into a suitcase. When he heard my footsteps, he turned with a fury I'd never witnessed before. Happy now, he snarled. You've destroyed everything I built. You destroyed it yourself, Logan. I just made sure you couldn't blame anyone else for the collapse. They'll never make the charges stick, he said, but uncertainty wavered beneath his bravado. I had contingency plans. Yes, I found those too, I replied calmly. The offshore accounts in the Caymans? The backup identities? All provided to investigators. He sank onto the bed, suddenly looking smaller. How did you do it? You were never interested in the financial details of my work. That's where you were wrong. I was always interested, you just stopped seeing me as someone worth sharing with. I leaned against the doorframe. You called me boring, Logan. Turns out attention to detail and methodical thinking are tremendous assets when dismantling a fraud. For a moment, vulnerability cracked through his anger. We had something real once, didn't we? Before all this. The question caught me off guard. Had we? Or had I just been a convenient stepping stone in his ascent? I think we did, I answered honestly. But you decided I didn't match your image anymore. You were rising. I was stuck. He flinched at his own words thrown back at him. What happens now? Now you leave. The divorce papers are on the kitchen counter. Sign them before you go. As I watched him finish packing, a complex emotion washed over me. Not quite satisfaction, not quite grief, but something in between. The man I'd loved, built a life with, and eventually exposed was reduced to stuffing wrinkled shirts into a box. When his car finally pulled away, I walked through our house. My house now. Touching surfaces, reacquainting myself with spaces that had felt foreign during our estrangement. In the kitchen, I found the signed divorce papers next to a hastily scrawled note. You won. Hope it was worth it. I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the deck, watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in gold and crimson. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Harrison offered me a position in compliance. Said my attention to detail was exactly what the department needs. I smiled, typing back, take it. We boring, reliable women need to stick together. The future stretched before me, uncertain but unburdened by Logan's dismissive judgment or crushing expectations. What he had seen as my greatest weakness had become my salvation. My steadiness. My reliability. My supposed boringness. In the end, I hadn't needed to change to match Logan's rising image. I'd simply needed to recognize my own worth without his validation. And that, ironically, was the most exciting revelation of all. If watching Anna transform from a discarded wife to the architect of Logan's downfall satisfied your sense of justice, I'd love to know your thoughts. My favorite part was when she wore the same dress to the board meeting. Such perfect symbolism. What moment in Anna's revenge journey resonated with you most? Drop your answer in the comments, hit subscribe for more stories of sweet justice, and like this story if you believe everyone eventually gets the receipt they deserve.